From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief digital strategist at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's show, I have John Overall with me of the WordPress Plugins A to Z podcast. And we're going to talk about what else? Plugins. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. The SDM show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing concierge that helps you put all your marketing pieces together. We are your marketing experts. We are also your WordPress security experts and know how to lock down a website and protect yourself from bad actors. So contact us at Stunning Digital Marketing today. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I have my guest, Mr. John Overall, a fellow Canadian and creator of the WP Plugins A to Z podcast. Hey John, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Rob. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. As I was telling you before we went to record, I'm a long-time listener. I think I go back, probably 8 or 9 years. I think your podcast is a great resource for the interview show that you do now, or also just for plugins. If you're looking for those unique plugins, you kind of round out 2 or 3 plugins every show. So how did you choose such a niche podcast? So not only is it WordPress, it's plugins, which is interesting.
Well, the interesting story about how I chose it, I had just started into WordPress. I just sold my computer store and I was reestablishing myself on the internet as a new business. And I'd looked at all the CMS systems that were available at the time, Drupal, I can't remember the others, and I settled on WordPress. And I started digging into it, and I realized when 3.0 came out, the plugins came at that time. And I realized this is going to be a game changer for the internet, a major game changer. And at that time when I started, there was a repo of 9,000 plugins. You can go back to my first couple episodes. I'd say there's 9,000. Then a few episodes later, there's 15,000. They were growing exponentially. And I had this vision in my head for some strange time. I was going to cover plugins starting with the letter A and move to the letter Z. Well, I got about 7 episodes into it and I realized how insane that was. And it just kept evolving. And part of the reason I started the show was to establish myself in it and do research and learn and to help build my now young business. And it actually did that over time. I've got clients from my early episodes, my first 50 episodes that came to me listening to your show, I really like this. I think I've got like 5 or 6 clients that came to me at that time, and they're still clients to this day from it.
That's the value of podcasting. It gives, and I'll say this, one of the reasons I do a show is for the business. I love doing it. Don't get me wrong, John. But the ROI on the business is worth every dime of it and every piece of work. Right.
Well, it is, because what it does, it establishes you as an expert in the field and a go-to person. The other interesting thing it does is people listen to your podcast, and as they listen to you talk, they're building a rapport with you that you don't know exists. They come to think they know you. They get an idea of who you are by your show and what you're doing. And what happens, I got this a few times, it just stunned me. I have them, they call me up, they'd want me to work. And next thing I know, they'd given me all their passwords to everything to access. And I was like, wait a minute, you don't know who I am. Why? And so, well, I trust you. I've been listening to you. And I was like, okay, now that's a stunning thing to take on, but it happens. And it's an interesting thing. I really enjoyed it because the podcast has been a big part of my career through WordPress over the years.
Yeah. I started mine. It's funny. At the start of COVID, I always tell the story. I was bored in COVID and I thought, I do an interview. I do 2 interviews. I do 3 interviews. Well, 3 interviews as of this week. We're at 550. and counting, a mix of solo tip shows, interviews, and more. So it's like it
Yeah.
explodes. And then we both know people that are what I call professional podcasters.
Oh
So I
yeah.
talked about people like you were just on WP Builds, and Nathan is a good friend.
Yeah.
And Nathan Wrigley is amazing. But that's what he does. All his energy goes into podcasting.
Yeah.
My
He,
friend, if you know Bob Dunn, over at Bob WP over at Do the Woo,
yep.
Bob's a good friend as well, but Bob is a professional podcaster. That's what these guys do all day.
Hmm.
Where you and I are doing podcasts to put eyes on the business.
That's what I'm doing for it, to put eyes on a business and to
Yeah.
expand expand knowledge. The other great thing it does is it forces me to expand my knowledge because, okay, I'm bringing something. Well, I need to at least know what I'm talking about when I do it. And if I bring a new plugin, well, I got to dive into that plugin and see how it works
Yeah.
or how it benefits or what it does for people. So,
Yeah, that's true. So let's dive into plugins. You've reviewed way too many over the years. I've lost count. Sorry, John.
it's over 1,500 is how many I've reviewed. I checked it one time.
Yeah, I had looked and I just said I'm not counting. I know your show now says over 80,000 plugins, so that's how
Yep.
much the repository has increased, and you've changed that on a
Yep.
regular basis.
Yep.
Plugin landscape is changing, and I think we're headed, in my opinion, more to the paid plugin. Do you have any thought or see where this is going in your experience, or what's your gut?
Well, I saw the freemium plugin before it became a thing.
Yeah.
Back in some early episodes, I made mention the first time I saw one, I said, wait a minute, this is where this is going. It's going to be freemium because initially plugins, people were trying to do it the way the internet was created in the beginning, buy me coffee, donate to me. Well, what happens is people don't do that. The plugin developers, they make these, but they can't make a living off donations. They need a model to live. So they started having the free version, which had just enough stuff so you could see if the plugin would work, and then the premium version. Well, we are moving now more towards the absolute premium version. This started, I noticed it about a year ago when I picked up a couple that were absolute premium with a small teaser of you can go in and try it on their website. They've got they're putting their demos on a website so you can go in and see the full functionality in what they have as a controlled environment where you can't get the code, but you can play with the site or to see if that plugin will suit your needs. And that is coming down the pike because the freemium version, people want more and more stuff free, but they don't realize how much it costs to maintain a plugin. I mean, there's a lot of time that goes into it, especially if you become successful. You know, it's a lot of cost of the plugins is not so much in the code, but in the answering the support tickets for all
The
the people.
support tickets.
That's where the problem lies, is in the support of the plugin. You end up, if you become really successful, what happens, like there's a really great plugin out there, the not the connections, Conversion Bridge.
Yes.
Derek, I interviewed him. He was a really great guest, and I've been playing with this plugin ever since. And he's pretty much a one-man show, but he's starting to see the effects of support tickets. And what eventually will have to happen is he'll have to have someone just to handle the support tickets as he becomes more and more successful. And that's what happens to anyone who becomes successful. So now you have to earn enough income to pay that one person to manage that stuff. And that's where it's going. So they're going to be moving it towards absolute premium plugins. And that'll probably occur over the next 2 or 3 years of time. It's not
Yeah,
going to be instantaneous.
I would think so. And I agree with you, support tickets. I'm good friends with Mark Westgard over at WS Forms, if you know the plugin.
I know the plugin.
Mark handles all his support tickets on his own. And it was funny. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago in Slack, and I said, "How's life?" And he said, "Well, between the dev stuff and all these damn support tickets, they just." And the problem is, and you know this, and I know this,
Yeah.
end users don't read. They
No.
want an answer. They want it quick. They won't do their own research.
Hmm.
They won't go to Google and say, how do I do this? They
Yeah.
won't go to YouTube and say, how do I do this? They
Hmm.
won't go to AI and say, how do I do this?
Hmm.
I know when I open up a support ticket, because I've worked in tech support, my question usually is, can you give me a link to a video that shows me how to do it? And then I'll leave you guys alone and go off on my merry
Yeah.
way. But there is a support cost, and it's hard to put a lot of money into support when you're charging $39, $49, $59 for a plugin.
Yeah. For a year. And that's where the thing is, people don't break it down. Well, that $59 a year, that's less than $5 a month for the plugin. And people don't analyze it in the breakdown cost to see how little they're actually paying for these things. I'm noticing plugins are moving to a bit higher tier of their costs on an
Yep.
annual basis. And it's understandable because they need to have the income to support the people to one, expand the plugin out, make it more viable. You know, we've seen over the years the different ways they've tried to the plugin developers have tried to do it, such as, lifetime licenses and the other things that have gone along with it. And every one of those models has had a wall, not a complete failure, but a wall that where they no longer had the income coming in to maintain the plugin. I've even seen a couple of them vanish from existence because of their poor choice in their pricing model.
Yeah, and the other thing we're seeing too in plugins, it's worth mentioning, we're seeing big web hosts running around buying plugins. And I'll give some examples. Bluehost jumped in and bought Yith some time ago, and they bought the entire Yith suite of plugins for WooCommerce.
Yeah.
GoDaddy some time ago bought Skyverge, which is a whole pile of WooCommerce plugins. And
Hmm.
then look what's gone on at Liquid Web with the entire Stellar brand, which I have to tell you, I had some reservations on how is being managed over there, but that's
Yeah.
another story. And not only did they buy plugins, they bought the highly successful Cadence block ecosystem over there. What do you think about that going on?
Well, the problem I've seen with that over the years is I've seen a fantastic plugin being managed really well, growing at a nice steady rate. They get bought out by a major player like GoDaddy or some other company that's buying up to consolidate. And partly, I think it's to gain the client base. And
Yep.
then I've seen the plugin development drop off the cliff and it become useless or next to useless. And I can't think of any, but there's been a few that I'd paid for over time. They were bought out, changed, and it was taken in a completely different development direction that the plugin was no longer a viable thing for me. So I had to cancel my subscription. And that is the problem I see that happens. There are a few companies that have done it right, and then they've maintained the plugins. I can't think of the names off the top of my head on it, but they've kept the plugin going in the right direction, even after the developer of the plugin slowly left to go do something else. He took his windfall and went on to do something else in life.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think what's kind of helped Stellar and the whole Cadence side of it is Ben Rittner, who's the developer of Cadence, is still with them.
yeah,
And I think that makes a difference. And I hope he stays because Cadence is kind of my block ecosystem add-on that I really like. So
yeah.
I think there's several others, but I'm hoping Ben stays, but I agree with you. All these plugins, that brings me to my favorite question. And
Okay.
I'm not going to turn this into a security show, but I might as well go there. It does bring some problems, doesn't it, with it?
Yeah, well, that's too many plugins does bring security issues. And in the last couple of years, due to Patch Stack, we've had a massive increase in the amount of security issues being found because Patch Stack has implemented their bounty program to encourage
Mm-hmm.
this. And it's been a great boon for it. I've seen fewer and fewer hacked websites because the security's gone up on plugins. Over the years, that's always been the big problem is, the plugins have been usually the vector of target for almost all security issues. And Yeah, I think the security is coming up quite nicely for it, and it's doing well. And people are putting more thought into security when they're building the plugins versus having it as an afterthought.
Yeah. What I would say though is the average website owner cannot keep track of all the vulnerabilities out there and who's out there and who's not out there and what's going on. I think it should come down to people like yourself and
Yeah.
myself and others to kind of dictate that.
Well,
Um,
you're right there. The average website owner doesn't know. They pay no attention. They just like they'll click update when there's an update on their plugin, or some of them will even have it set for auto update for everything, which is a mistake in my opinion. But
oh,
what I have seen, and I'm working with a few of my clients like this, is clients on a maintenance program to where it's like, okay, we'll notice when, okay, this plugin hasn't had an update for a while and go check it and say, okay, wait a minute, it's still functioning. Yes, it still seems to work, but it's been pulled from the WordPress repo for a security issue, but we have no clue what that security issue is. We just know it exists. And so we got to talk to clients. Say we either need to have us go in, figure out what's wrong and fix this plugin so the security issue is corrected, or we replace it with something known better to keep your functionality
yeah,
moving forward. And that's where doing site maintenance comes in for a lot of agencies now. They've realized the value of site maintenance, something I've been doing for years, which has
me
always
too.
been nice as a nice background income to keep me going through the slow periods in between big website developments. So
Yeah. And the other thing I'll tell you is I can't tell you the number of website owners who don't even know where their backups go. And that's an ongoing issue. And as I always say, the backup is only good as your ability to restore it, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, I learned a lesson. I guess it was about close to 20 years ago. Actually, it was about 20 years ago when I had my computer store. I'd always done backups of my nightly backups of my network and
mhm.
my sales data and everything. And somebody laughed at me because I kept 35 days of my backups. And they said, how's that going to help you? I said, trust me, you want a backup of the backup of the backup of the backup. It's always
Yeah.
something like that. Well, I came in one morning, fired up my computers, and everything crashed. And I went, oh, that's not good. Well, we'll restore to last night's backup. Well, it was corrupted. Oh, okay, maybe I'll lose a day's worth of data. I went back another day, it was still corrupt. I had to go back 7 days to find an uncorrupted file. It seems a
Oh,
corruption had snuck in, and I was backing up that corruption, but not knowing it was
yeah.
there. And then it just, when it crashed, if I'd only had, like most people, oh, I only got 7 days. If I only had 7 days, I wouldn't have had enough to restore my systems. Now, granted, I
Yeah.
lost a week's worth of data, but I didn't lose 5 years worth of data.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still think there's value into taking backups back. I usually keep them for 3 months or 4 months. So I think
Yeah.
there's value in that for that.
Well, there is,
Espe-
and I've got a nice example of that one there in that I had backups of clients that had left me. They come back a couple, 3 years later. They've had everything go to hell, and it's like, oh, you know what? I've got this. We can restore you to here, and that'll work. Because yeah, I keep backups going back for years. I'm very bad. I've got hard drives of backups for stuff.
yeah, I understand that. Let's dive into plugins.
Mhm.
There are some categories that are really what I call jammed. So the forms category, that's
Mhm.
one. I think you're a Gravity Forms guy,
I am.
victim, and that's fine. I'm not judging.
Well,
There's all kinds going on there. There's now there's this whole new category of community plugins. There's CRMs out there. What's the biggest growing category?
Well, the biggest growing category that I can think of right now is one that I'm stepping into with a major plug development, and that is helping clubs and organizations manage their users and their
Okay.
data. And this one is due to I have several clients that different clubs and organizations, and they each have different ways of doing everything that doesn't provide all their needs.
Yep.
So I've been in development with a plugin for some time now to help. manage this across all of them, no matter what the club and organization. They'll be able to get their membership fees. You know, a lot of clubs have outings and bookings. They'll be able to book these outings and collect fees for it. They'll have online management of their waiver forms. They'll have online membership sections that so their members can communicate more effectively. It's like there's so many things that are thrown into the mix for something like that. But that is a category I think is up and coming. There's competition out there, but there doesn't seem to be any standout competition from my research so far. So,
Yeah.
but it is one I've started developing. We've been in development now for about 5 months and hoping to have an alpha version out in September.
So that's amazing actually. There's two schools of thought. Do we run stuff from within WordPress? Like, can
Mhm.
WordPress handle stuff? And by that I mean, do you run your support system from within WordPress? Do you run your CRM from within WordPress? Do you run your mailing offerings through WordPress? And I think it comes down to, I hate to say this, what type of server that you're sitting on, but that's
Oh,
my
absolutely.
opinion.
That's
Where
absolute.
do you sit?
What's that?
Where do you sit on that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I run a lot of things from within my WordPress. There's some things I've realized don't need to be in there. And one of them, as I discovered with the Glow plugin, the Glow management system, it has stuff that I can't do in WordPress to allow me to manage
Yeah.
the multiple sites more effectively. I've tried different managers over time. The other one is what I found is the email system, like your mailing lists. I used to use MailChimp and I can't remember another one, but MailChimp for years. But the big problem I had was I had to duplicate my work when I sent out a letter to MailChimp. Well, the MailPoet system plugin that works within WordPress, you don't have to duplicate your work. You can, once you set up your templates, all you do is make your post. The email system automatically takes the content and sends the email for you. So there's things like that that should be in WordPress. There's some things that don't need to be there, but there's some that are. The CRM system, I have a completely separate CRM system. I use WHMCS for all my CRM system
Yep.
because it's more robust and it's completely different and it's got a very specific task. WordPress has got a lot of uses. You could do that in WordPress, but I think that's going to be a problem. And as you said, it depends on the server you're on. I have my own servers. So that saves me the grief of fighting with a company because I need more resources to do something. I just know I need more resources. I log into my server and I give myself the resources I need. I do that for my clients too on my servers as I need to, which is why I keep a low amount of websites on all of my servers.
Yeah. Yeah. I have my own servers as well, and it's a big game changer if
It is.
anybody's managing a pile. And the way I work is I insist that clients are either on my server or, and there's an or, because some don't want to be. I
Yeah.
give them a list of web hosts and say it's got to be on one of these, and that's the end of it. There's no negotiation.
Yeah.
There's no, there's no that.
Yeah. It
Um,
is definitely true that some web hosts are better than others. Absolutely.
uh, we're also seeing an interesting phenomenon in the WordPress space right now.
Mhm.
A lot of WordPress plugin manufacturers branching out to Shopify these days.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, Yoast did it
Mhm.
before after they were bought by Bluehost. They are now owned by Bluehost.
Right.
Um, Katie Keith over at Barn2 Plugins is doing it.
Yep.
I know Mark's talking about doing it, and we're
Mhm.
seeing this more and more. What's your gut on that? Is that good or bad or indifferent?
Well, it's good, bad, and a little bit of indifference, mainly because Shopify exists because WooCommerce was too hard to make work for the average user, the
Yep.
average person
Yep.
out there. It's the reason Shopify exists. Initially, I fought against it. I'm not going to personally go into the Shopify environment. We'll never say never. I've learned that never say never. But at the moment, that's not someplace I want to look into. But what's happening is people have realized it's like, well, the WordPress environment is so packed. Shopify is wide open, and Shopify is attracting all of these people who just want to put a store together and they need plug and play stuff that works. And that's why it's going that way. And it'll stay that way. One of the things I did notice, and I haven't verified all this information yet, but it seems if you become really successful on Shopify, you start to get so much traffic that they start charging you higher and higher tier fees. So
Yeah,
there are people
they do.
they're seeing that higher tier fee and they're going, wait a minute, if I go back to WordPress and WooCommerce, and because now that they're higher T, they've got a lot of experience with managing things. And because WooCommerce is offering, people are flipping back to WooCommerce where the price suddenly drops back down to something more fixed for their business. So I see Shopify as a way to train the people to bring them back to WordPress.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And I think one of the things that's causing this is all the uncertainty in the ecosystem. And I really don't want to turn this into a political show, but we know what happened at WordCamp US last year.
Yeah,
We know about all the lawsuits running around. We know about what's
right.
going on. And I think about people just being antsy. And I think part of that is I think we see more and more abandoned plugins in the WordPress repository in the last while.
We've seen a whole lot of abandoned plugins. Some of them I've rescued and I've set them aside to fork them because they're plugins I use. I've had to do that with one yesterday for a client. It's the one that I found about that hit a security issue. It's been abandoned, it's gone, but because I have a copy of it functioning, I can take it and fork it. Which is the nice thing is about it is if you see a plugin in a WordPress repo that's abandoned and it's something you can use, grab the code because you can fork it, or if you can't do the coding yourself, you can hire. There are dozens of freelance developers just begging for work.
Yeah.
So it's not the end. And it is unfortunate. It's going to impact a lot of sites, especially if it's a plugin that's got, a few thousand loads here,
Installs.
installs here and there. It's going to impact websites and it's going to impact security.
Yep.
So
We were talking earlier. I see the day, and my sources tell me it's coming. I can't say where, that we are going to see some mirrored repositories, which would actually be really good for the enterprise game more than
mhm.
anything, because enterprise doesn't like one point of failure.
Yeah. One point of failure is a problem. And our eyes were opened up to that. We've been going for 21 years not realizing that we had one sole point of failure and it was controlled by one person. I was always the
Yeah.
understanding that it wasn't controlled like that. And it opened the eyes of many people. My plugins I'm doing now, mine are updatable directly from GitHub. There's
Okay.
several other repos. I've been bringing different repos to the show. What's going to happen? It's not just the mirrored repos I see happening, it's the federated repos.
Mhm.
That is the one that I'm looking forward to is a federated version of the repo to where people will still get data like they get from the WordPress repository of how many installs and how many downloads. But if it goes into mirrored, you won't know if it's being pulled from these mirrors. You won't get that data. But the federated version, which was talked about last fall, which I personally believe is in development by the different people. I don't know this for a fact, but I believe that people are still working on this in the background. That will make a big game changer to WordPress in that now there's no single point of failure for it to go down.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And the federated verse has been catching on, certainly amongst techies.
Mm.
Don't think amongst the regular people,
Mm.
the lay people, but I
Well,
think amongst people like you and I.
the regular people don't care. They just want to know they can log into their WordPress website. They go in, they type in a plugin they need. It appears. They go, yep, that's the one I want, and then they install it on their site. That's all they want to know. They don't care where it comes from. They just want to know it comes from a place that is been vetted for the plugin to be not full of viruses and malware. Now this was a problem probably what about 10 years ago. in the early days of WordPress when they were you could get plugins anywhere and everywhere, and people were just throwing them up, and they weren't vetted. I ran into a couple myself that when I got them, they were full of malware code. So now there's a little more. What people want to do is they want to make sure their plugin is coming from a reputable source, and
Yeah.
that's highly important. I mean, the nice thing,
Yeah.
if you go to GitHub and get your plugins, you're usually a bit of a geeky, so you can go read the code before you even download it.
Yeah, that's true. Do you have any more advice for anybody looking at plugins besides listening to your show, of course,
Well,
which kind of kind of validates a pile?
listen to the show. The one thing, it's always the one question I see thrown about how many plugins do you need for a WordPress website?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, my advice is you need the number of plugins to get the functionality you need for the site you're building. If your site is a basic blog post, you need like 5 plugins. If you're building an intensive e-commerce site, you might be up at 40 plugins. People are saying that's too many. Well, it's either a plugin or you write custom code. Either way, you need that code. You can write it yourself and throw it into the functions file or build your own plugin, but either way, that code has got to be run to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So it's either a plugin or something else. Now, when you're getting plugins, vet the plugin, sort of ask around. It's like, hey, how is this developer? Do they throw a lot of unnecessary junk in their plugin? Do they have too many pop-ups on the dashboard that say buy our premium one, or upgrade? Is it got extra stuff in it that you don't need? Check the plugin out. Go ask questions from the seller of the plugin if it's a premium plugin. Go ask them questions. So that's the advice I got is get the plugins you need to do what your website needs to do, but vet where you get those plugins from.
Yeah, no kidding. And by the way, if you're having problems with 40 plugins, you need them all. Maybe you need to find a better web host or a better server, a better plan with more resources or
Yep.
something along that lines. It's not just a coding issue. And everybody says, oh, it's a coding issue. My argument would be there's good hosts and there's bad hosts, and they're not all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And buying cheap in the hosting business doesn't always get you what you want.
No, it doesn't. And I think my record for a website for full functionality has been 75 plugins.
Wow. Just a
And
few. I think I was thinking the other day, I think I'm running about 20 or 22, but that's,
that's an average site for me is 22 plugins. That's an average site we build because there's some plugins that I just want. And a lot of them are like insignificant ones, such as Classic Editor and Classic Widgets, because I don't use the block editor. I use Elementor for all my builds and development.
I know that. Hey, John, this has been great. Best place to get the podcast besides on all major podcast platforms or talk to you, where are the best places to go?
Oh, the best place to go is wppro-a-to-z.com or wppluginsa-to-z.com. And those are the 2 best places to reach out and find me. Also you can find me on Twitter. I'm on X, but my username on X is unusual. So it's AHKONSU, Onkonsu. It's an old Twitter handle from back in the day.
Oh yeah, and we don't give up those old handles, do we?
No, I still have a very old handle for my Gmail, which I'm not ashamed of, but it's Sir Dragonlord, and that was from the early days of Gmail. I actually have Dragonlord over on Reddit. I have Dragonlord on Reddit, which means I signed in and I looked at it and said, I did 18 years ago. I created that account.
Yeah. Hey, John, thanks for this. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and have a wonderful day.
All right. Thanks.
This podcast has been brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital marketing concierge to help the business owner put all his pieces together, whether it's email marketing, WordPress security, WordPress design and development, PPC, and more. Text Stunning Digital Marketing for all your digital marketing needs today. Very special thank you to John for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show It's dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much every day. My mother, Ann Cairns, who's still doing really well and is an inspiration. And of course, Tiz Maroney. And Tiz, I know I've said it, but thank you so much for all the inspiration you give me every day.